Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gland Bodybuilding Mountain. And today I'm going to talk to you about a couple subjects while I perform a few sets in the garage here. And first things first, I already did legs. I did some squats already, just with 3 plates today. I felt like going light and just doing 2 sets of intense instead of drawing it out into 5 or 6 sets. And one subject that comes to mind that I want to talk to you about is intensity versus volume. And the trap of a lot of bodybuilding programs and a lot of people training, I think, is that they get into volume being more important than intensity. And the truth is intensity matters. And when I talk about intensity, I'm talking about effort, like how close to failure do you get in this set? So the closer to failure that you get in the set, the more you burn out that muscle with that intensity. You know, the theory is that you flick a switch and somehow the body then signals a certain adaptive response from that intensity. Now, one could say that volume does also help with that. Like there's a certain threshold for volume as well. And I do believe that may be different for each person. But sometimes what I think people get caught up in is doing too much volume and therefore becoming more of an endurance athlete and burning themselves out at the same time. They're not necessarily getting more adaptation from doing more volume. If anything, maybe they're holding themselves back. Maybe they're not recovering properly. So I do believe that recovery plays a role, and depending on where you're at in your life, where you're at with your diet, where you're at with your own individual health at the time, you know, these things can all affect how well your body's recovering. And honestly, I wish I could give you an exact answer about what is the perfect amount of sets, what's the perfect amount of volume for each person. But I'm still figuring that out for myself when it comes down to, where I'm at in my life, and what works best for me. But one thing I will say is that you do want to find the minimum amount of sets and the minimum intensity to be able to accomplish your goal of getting results, right? And there's a play of both. And I do feel that I need more than 1 set, because one could argue I can't manifest enough intensity in 1 set for it to be effective enough. Like that's me, right? Because I find that, say you're doing squats, obviously taking that to absolute failure would be dangerous. And at the same time, taking the squat into deep levels of failure is also next to impossible, because you don't want to collapse with the weight. And at the same time, it hurts a lot. Like it's very, very difficult metabolically. You're out of breath and everything. And at the same time, the muscular burn, there's a lot of different sensations and pains that go with the territory of taking a set to deep levels of failure, especially when you're working with moderate rep ranges. It's easy to take a set of 4 reps to failure. That's easy, right? There's not so much pain involved. But once we start to move into, 10 reps, 20 reps, 30 reps, you can see the progression of pain goes up exponentially. You don't just get that dead muscle. And in order to accomplish absolute intensity, one could argue that you want to not only just kill the fast twitch fibers, but also to destroy the slow twitch fibers. You want the whole muscle to be fatigued. So in that tradition, I do feel that you want to err more on the side of intensity and hitting as close to failure as you can, and at the same time not creeping up into excessive volume. And I'm open to whatever it takes for you to accomplish this. Some people, they're the HIIT people, they really believe it. And that never worked for me, but there's probably a lot of reasons for that. But I will say I'm open to the fact of 2, 3, 4 sets being enough to really stimulate a muscle in order for it to grow. And recovery, one could argue, in a lot of people, is probably their weak link. Even if their diet is perfect, recovery is probably one of the weakest links. And so you want to make sure you have a good balance between recovery and stimulation. And I'm kind of looking at just my training right now and saying, okay, what will happen now if I take extra days off and do a lower amount of sets for a period of time and see how that stimulates my body, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that, just these little experiments. That's what makes it fun, right? So like I've said, it's really important for you to find out what works, but also be open-minded enough to discard what has worked if it stops working, or if it's not working as well as you think it should, and then try something new. And the lower volume approach with some increasing intensity but more days off might be the right thing for certain periods of time. I'm not an expert on you, but the thing is that it's definitely a possibility. And those of you who don't know, I have an identical twin brother who trains differently than I do in a lot of cases. I mean, we used to train quite similarly, but sometimes due to work and commitments of family and all this stuff, he trains differently. And I would say that he trains at a more relaxed pace, but he's still maintaining quite a bit of muscle and looks great. So the thing is that a lot of different techniques can work. It's just a matter of what works the best for you right now. So keep experimenting, keep trying things. Keep playing around, and that's what I'm going to do. So the next little while, I'm going to conduct an experiment on myself, up the intensity a little bit, try to go deeper into failure if I can, and one example of this is today I'm going to do 2 or 3 sets of inclines, but on the last set, I'll do a strip set with 70 pounders and take that into a deeper level of failure, and that's it. That's going to be my chest workout. I did legs already, of course, like I said, but I'm going to do that, and then I might do 1 or 2 sets of just bicep curl, and just take it as deep into failure as I can. And that's it. That'll be my workout, right? So I know it seems like you're supposed to get married to one way or the other, but the thing is, I'm not. I'm married to results. That's it. That's what I want, and if something's, like I said, if something's injuring you or not giving you results, then maybe there's something that needs to change. And I'm not saying I'm not getting results. I feel pretty good in my training right now, but it just feels like I'm almost, I don't know, I feel a disturbance in the force, almost like I need to kind of recover a bit and then push and then recover and just play around with that for a little bit and see where it goes, right? I'm sure I'll land back into my main way of training. I'm sure I'll land back into that again. But it seems like these little changes just make it interesting for me, so that's why I do it. So yeah, let's do a set and move on from there. Now that was my first set. So I'm gonna move up to the 120s for the next set. And then maybe I'll go back down to the hundreds and then do a strip set for that last one. But something I wanna talk about that just came to mind. And this is gonna be relevant for all of you, because what I'm gonna say about a lot of times intensity, how it's misunderstood is that a lot of people say, well, you just gotta take that muscle to failure no matter what when you're using heavy weight, and therefore you're gonna automatically get stronger and gain more muscle. Now, I'm open to that doing the majority of the job. I'm not saying it will not. I'm saying it is very effective, but there's something that's misunderstood about gaining strength. And one thing that you need to understand when it comes down to gaining strength is that coordination and refinement of the groove is part of gaining strength. It's part of being able to establish that comfort with that heavy weight, as well as the ability to lift it. So I think there's in some people at least, there's a misunderstanding around the building of the nervous system strength and the muscular strength. Now, they're not really the same because they work in different pathways, although they're both dependent on each other. If you're working from the bodybuilding perspective primarily, you're not necessarily looking to specialize in that nervous system. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is that if you're doing constant strip sets, constant pushing the muscle to failure, using medium repetitions, 8 to 12, 8 to 15, whatever, you'll still be going up in strength. But I think you also should incorporate heavy sets from time to time that are not to failure, just so you can refine the groove and basically work with the heavier poundages that way. And the reason why I'm saying this is that if you're going to absolute positive exhaustion with, rep ranges of 5 and 6 and 7 reps, there's a certain danger of muscular tears in that weight range, right? But at the same time, that when you're hitting absolute exhaustion, then coordination becomes a bit of an issue, and your coordination may falter, and that causes sometimes momentary lapses, which can cause injuries. And at the same time, you'll notice that you burn out if you're hitting failure with super heavy poundages all the time. You'll burn out much faster, and it won't necessarily help you put on strength. If anything, your strength will go backwards. So like I said, there's intensity in 2 different forms. One is in using weights that are really heavy in low rep ranges, and the other one is in taking the muscle to absolute annihilation and exhaustion. And only you can decide how much of a percentage of one direction or another you go in. But I think experimenting with both methods is relevant. They're 2 different tools that you put into the toolbox in order to access unrealized gains in a certain area. So for myself, I don't use 5, 6 rep ranges that often, but when I do, I'm definitely not looking to do the failure sets. I'm not looking to say I'm going to take this muscle to absolute exhaustion and annihilation. In that moment, what I'm doing is I'm saying, how do I refine the groove to make sure that everything is safe and flying up easily, and not necessarily putting undue stress on the wrong areas. That's really where my focus is in that moment. But then when I'm doing this type of stuff, although the 120s are pretty heavy for me on an incline, I'm not necessarily quite as adamantly careful as I would be, say, if I was using the 130s or 140s or something, right? So yeah, there's just a different strategy. Both strategies are good. And I think people get lost into either or and saying, oh, it's only this or only that. I think a combination of each is definitely part of this whole process. Mountain. Okay, let's go to a heavier set here. Wish me luck. See what I can do. Awesome, that felt pretty good. So basically I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna do a set of 100s, and I'm gonna do a strip set down to the 70s. Once again, I'm working on the intensity on the hitting failure level, or at least trying to anyway, or close to. But of course, anything to do with intensity or anything to do with training, if you start to feel a tweak or a weird twinge or something off, then definitely stop the set, or recalibrate, or whatever it is you need to do, but don't push through it. That's what I would recommend, right? And the other thing is that there's always debates about what is the perfect rep range, but the perfect rep range is anything that falls within a minute and a half or so to complete the set. That's really it. I mean, it's the ATP creatine cycle, and I think a lot of people are too fixated. Like, I just saw a guy on TikTok say some bullshit saying 8 to 12 reps is all that matters. That's the best, most efficient. Why even bother doing the other stuff? It could be junk volume. That's the biggest load of bullshit that anybody could ever say, because there are different rep ranges that specifically hit different muscle fibers. And once you've hit certain muscle fibers and you've burned out that pathway, say the fast switch fibers and so forth, say you've done lots of 8 rep sets or 10 rep sets to failure, and you're like, okay, now the next time you work out, it makes sense to start to access these other muscle fibers. It's like you want to get residual muscular gains from all these different places instead of just beating one pathway to death. And I found that I gained more strength that way in the long run. And I got a lot more results from varying up the rep ranges. I think if you stick to one rep range, if you're getting results, keep doing it. But I think once you start to plateau a bit, the best thing you could ever do is start to vary up the rep ranges, heavier, lighter, or high reps or low reps and high reps, back and forth. Start playing around with that. And you're going to notice that you're going to get this unbelievable synergy between blood flow, optimized blood flow, endurance, stimulation of different fibers. And in the end, the unit of muscle works better together. And then you end up getting more strength and more muscular size because of it. So Yeah, that people underestimate. A lot of natural bodybuilders, they underestimate the power of synergy. It's not about what's best, it's about finding that perfect combination of several elements. And when you put that together, it's unreal. It feels great, and it'll give you a lot more results for the same amount of effort, you know? So yeah, that's it. But yeah, so yeah, we'll do a set here of the hundreds and move down to the 70s. Just, you know, I predict now, I'm not gonna get a lot of reps of the 70s after doing the hundreds, but you know, you just gotta play around, have some fun. So that was a good set. That felt really good. And like once in a while doing a strip set is not a bad idea. Again, it's not something you have to do every single workout just to get a benefit from it. And of course, if you do it too much, you will burn out. But once in a while, it definitely can help stimulate that area. So after doing the first set of the 100s and then moving into the 70s, I got this massive like pump in the upper chest. Like it felt great. And then this flush of heat that just goes through the body, right? So you'll notice that in the end, you know, natural bodybuilding is about pushing through different thresholds, right? Different limits. And the pain threshold is a big part of that, but you're trying to push through the pains that make sense to push through, but not the pains that don't make sense to push through. And you learn to discern the difference, right? Like, obviously you don't want to be pushing through any stabbing pains or any of that shit. But the fact is that intensity is necessary for muscular growth. It's just that there's more than one type of intensity. And playing around with that can really give you some great results over the long run. And don't be afraid of changing it up from time to time. You know, one of the best ways to get new gains is to change something up in your program, maybe taking more days off or less days. It just depends on how you are built and what's going on. But just play around if you don't know the answer. Just play around, observe, and find out what is working and what isn't, you know, just by observing, just by observation, right? So yeah, that's my upper chest workout here. I just did that. I already trained some legs and I'm gonna train some biceps later. And I hope this helps you out in your training, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgalantbodybuilding.com. And thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. Mountain.